Welcome to the Grawlix Podcast live show, Grawlix Nights. I always mix that around a little bit. Hey, I'm Randy.
I'm Melanie.
I'm Jesse.
And we are joined by special guest, Mr. Matty McDouble D's. I'm sorry. It's been a while.
Butchered that. Wow.
Matt D of 60s Reboot Podcast and Comics with My Kids and produces Hey, I Got a New Book and 17 other podcasts. Okay, just those three. Hey, so here's what's on the agenda. We're going to talk about Frankenstein. It's a Frankenstein's monster made out of Frankenstein's monsters. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about several different versions of Frankenstein's, several different takes.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered, did any of us have sexy Frankensteins? Because last week we had a whole bunch of sexy Draculas. And then
mine sort of starts out as a sexy Frankenstein a little bit.
I mean, Frankenstein is not traditionally known for his sexiness. Not the monster, anyway.
If you think John Bean is sexy, I guess sexy Frankenstein.
Oh,
sure.
Sean Bean?
Christopher Lee is sexy, and he played Frankenstein.
Yeah.
There's Thomas Jane.
Yeah.
Those are all sexy. I'm super excited to talk about the pick I watched this week because I can't escape it. I can't escape Doctor Who. So I was looking for something. I was looking for something maybe kind of unusual, something just different, because last week we kind of ran into the issue of like, it's all pretty much the same type of portrayal of vampires. This week, I don't think we have that issue. So I come across, I'm going to start this all backwards, even though I just said, the reason I picked this, I will say what I watched. I watched a movie called Frankenstein Unbound from 1990. This was written and directed by Roger Corman. So it's a Roger Corman classic. In fact, I think it's his last feature that he directed. And I had actually watched this when I was a kid. And this came out in 1990. So sometime in the early 90s, I had rented this of my own choosing. I was like, I want to watch this. And I remember being kind of disappointed in it. But for whatever reason, I was like, well, I'd have to find this movie. And I found it on YouTube. Just some random upload. Somebody uploaded the whole movie. It is in standard def, but it's all there. So I was like, well, that's what I'm doing. Otherwise, it was kind of hard to track down. But other than that whole thing, why did I want to watch this specifically? Because the main character of this is a doctor. Not a Dr. Frankenstein. A Doctor Who. A war doctor. John Hurt is the lead in this. And I was like,
God.
Doctor Who connection again, 2 weeks in a row. We're doing it. And then like also, and Matt can touch on this a little bit more later, I think, thematically. So this has got John Hurt, a doctor. It's got time travel. It's got Dr. Frankenstein. It's got Frankenstein's monster and Mary Shelley. So it's got fictitious characters and it's historical characters. It's a mess. But anyway, okay. So Frankenstein Unbound. It is much more sci-fi than horror. John Hurt, as I mentioned. Raul Julia is Dr. Frankenstein. A lot of people our age, I think, will know him more specifically from, Street Fighter. But also,
yes, Street Fighter.
Like
he's crowning achievement.
He's the good thing about Street Fighter, the movie.
Well,
He's the one go-to when people talk about it. Even if they like the movie in like a campy way, everybody agrees. Raul Julia is great.
Oh yeah.
And he also played Gomez Addams in the 90s Addams Family movies.
Okay.
So that's how you might know him. He's great in this, by the way. Oh, we lost Matt D out of nowhere. He's great in this, by the way. Matt, if you can see this, just hit the link again and I'll add you when I see you jump into the queue. Because he plays Frankenstein from it's subdued, but still mad scientist angle. And Raul Julia, he's so
man.
good. Like he's so good at. I think that's part of why he's awesome and why he gets the respect he does is because even when he do just schlock bad movies, man, he'd sell it, and he always looked like he was having fun. Like he never looked like he was slumming it, even if the movie was terrible. He was there to. He wanted to play that role. Like
he was there to enjoy his craft. Yay.
I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Doing the producing thing.
Yep, doing the producing thing.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the basic story of this. I know I said about the review and then I jump all over, but here's the basic story is John Hurt plays a scientist. He's not Dr. Frankenstein in the year the distant future of 2031. So we're actually not caught up there yet.
Wow.
By the way, 2031 has some excellent matte paintings. Just so you know, something to look forward to once we get to 2031. The cities, great paintings. And he was trying. It's so funny the way they handle it, but he's trying to create a weapon because he knows, whatever, people are going to make weapons, but he's trying to create a weapon that won't destroy the earth. And the weapon he creates is some type of laser beam that somehow damages time. So there's time slips that they talk about rather casually, even though the inference is that it's going to like
slips, or are we basically doing sliders again? Because wasn't that a friggin' laser too?
Was it? It's always a laser. By the end of this movie, there's lasers. It's like what is happening? What are these lasers? Doesn't matter.
It's the 90s.
Yeah. But basically, the idea is like these time slips eventually will end the world or something. He's basically created something, but at the same time is still trying to sell it to the government that inadvertently is destroying the time-space continuum. Well, at some point there's like a time storm and he gets sucked into it and spit out in the, what would it be, the 1700s or something, around the,
That's where Mary Shelley comes in.
Him and his talking car, by the way, gets sucked up, and because he's got to have a talking car.
Holy moly, it's Hasselhoff. John Hurt is Hasselhoff.
There's a little bit of Knight Rider in here. And spit out in 1700s or whenever. Mary Shelley's rolling around pre-Shelley, pre-marriage, so it's Mary whatever, but it's her and that weird literary threesome group. Lord Byron and the other guy. But also Dr. Frankenstein is there, and he's an actual person, and she hasn't written the book yet. He's already created Frankenstein's monster. In fact, the Frankenstein aspect of this is more Bride of the Frankenstein, but that's like just one part of like this otherwise like man out of time story. And that's the thing. So what's good? This could be a negative, but it's so weird watching this older. I actually enjoyed this way more than I remember when I watched it as a kid. Even though it's 1990, it feels like an older movie because everything's overdubbed and it's just like the quality, which most movies really are, but it's just the quality of overdub. Like all the actors are great. This also had Bridget Fonda. Jason Patrick played the monster. No, he didn't. He played Lord Byron. Nick Brimble played the monster. Well,
hey, Randall, I think you're missing the most important person in the movie.
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
Who
played Dr. Frankenstein?
Oh no, we're Raul Julia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's when you dropped out.
That's when you dropped out.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we talked about his genius. Yes.
You just weren't listening.
I always miss the good stuff.
You weren't listening to me. Yeah, that must have been when you dropped out.
Jerry the gnome.
No, I'm glad you brought him up. He was great in this. I mean, I already said it, but he was great. Anyway. And then the combination of the score, the music it felt like kind of an older monster movie. It just felt like an older movie. So like everything about the sound design felt older than 1990, and so it's kind of a weird thing. Plus, you know, I mean, it was 1990, so they wasn't crazy CGI, but like the matte paintings, there were a few matte paintings. They were awesome, but they were obviously matte paintings, and it's just like, I don't know, the old like genre movie junkie in me is like all about that.
You know, I remember watching that as a kid too, and I always thought it was funny because it was like Mark Twain's A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court mixed with Frankenstein's monster, and it kind of like melded real nicely together.
Right.
And I think like wasn't in the movie, did they show like a knight like trying to come through the time
before he gets sucked
whatever?
out of the future? Like, yeah, like a knight or somebody on a horse, like some warrior on a horse rides out of this somewhat vagina-like cloud fissure in the sky.
It's a laser.
And then the cloud was not. And then throws a spear at John. He throws a spear at John Hurt, and before the spear hits him, it like freezes. And then, very fortunately, the knight guy, the horse, and the spear get sucked back up into the cloud. Yeah. So, also, this was based on a book, but there's a lot of super interesting ideas. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, it's much more like there's some of the Frankenstein's monster stuff is there, but that Frankenstein in itself is very sci-fi, but the movie leans heavily sci-fi. It's a time travel story. That said, the character that John Hurt plays, terrible time traveler. He does everything wrong. He does the worst. He has sex with Mary Shelley. That's probably not good. That's probably not a good idea. You don't want to go back and start betting famous people.
Especially when she's so young and he's John Hurt.
Right. Even at 1990, John Hurt, kind of old. A little too old. It's weird. But hey, he drove her around in his future talking car, including, for whatever reason, he decided he's to take her a little spin right through the middle of the village that just literally like 15 minutes ago burnt a woman for being a witch. I'm like, maybe don't drive your future car through the middle of a village, you idiot. Like, he printed off a copy of her book that she has not written yet. And it's like, here, look. No, what are you doing?
He's just handing out paradoxes.
Yeah, he really is.
Where else is he going to get up to 88 miles an hour in his car?
That's true. He wasn't thinking fourth dimensionally.
There's not a whole lot of roads. He's got to try to get, so like, and there's some nonsense. I mean, honestly, even that, I don't mind that. The end kind of doesn't really make sense to me. I like aspects of it. Some of the kind of budgetary constraints become very obvious in the end. They end up in this different setting, and John Hurt's being chased through like this. I'm assuming they were going for like a big corridor of weird machinery and computerized like laser beams and stuff everywhere. But it is so apparent that they're literally just running from one side of the room to the other and then cutting back to the other side, and just running through the same little space of like set over and over and over.
It really was just Doctor Who, wasn't it?
It's so Doctor Who. It's so Doctor Who. It's honestly not that far off of something that Matt will tell us about. The worst aspect I think of this though is like the editing's real bad, but also I hate the Frankenstein monster makeup. It looks, I should pull up something. Hold on. It looks not great. I'm just not a fan of the design. The design they went with. It's weird.
Oh,
it's real weird. The coolest thing is, I mean, they used it as the poster art. Is the eyes? They do this ridiculous. Like, I don't know why you would do that. It doesn't make sense. But looks super cool. When they get some close-ups, you can see it pretty well. Very nice. Just this whole thing though. What? No, don't do it.
Yeah, I think they were trying to go for like a Hellraiser look. With like
it does have that feel. It is so late 80s, early 90s in the makeup for sure. also like there's kind of it really plays on the Frankenstein didn't just bring a person like sew a dude back together or sew a body together and bring someone to life. He like made him stronger and improved him. It's like a $6 million undead man or something. Like I could rebuild him. So I think that's the idea with all the like weird neck muscles and ligature. Like it's almost like a bad 90s comic book villain or something.
It's like he injected him with what's his name? With some Arnold. Like he had bottled up Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right. Pure Schwarzenegger juice.
Steroid testosterone Schwarzenegger.
Yep.
With a little Jesse the Body Ventura thrown in.
Yep.
Oh yeah, here's a future car.
It's basically the Batmobile.
Yeah, it very much is. It very
From
much
the
is.
60s, though.
It's the 60s Batmobile if they remade it in the 80s.
Right.
Totally.
And I think I could be wrong, but it kind of looked like John Hurt was channeling Bowie in that.
That his outfit is 100% Bowie.
Yeah, I thought so.
For sure.
I mean, I'm not convinced that Bowie isn't a time traveler, so there you go.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, if you read the comic books, David Bowie did time travel with the Doctor.
You're right. I've heard that.
Makes perfect sense.
He wasn't called David Bowie. They gave him a different name because they didn't want to pay for the rights for his likeness. So he was like Jones or something like that.
So did you like it?
Yes. Anytime the monster like it feels weird because, and this is why it's also extra strange that I enjoy it more as an adult than I did as a kid, because it feels almost too goofy to be geared towards adults. But at the same time, as soon as the monster comes in, it goes straight into schlock, like gory monster movie stuff or gory horror movie stuff, like 80s. Like he rips an old, like a cop, whatever they would call it in 1700s, wherever this is.
Constabulary.
Constable. He rips his heart out and like punches into his chest, rips his heart out, and the cop's like watches it as he dies, the heart beating, and so it's got like that level of weird gore, which feels, it's not 100% out of place, but it does feel at odds with what the rest of the movie's doing, which is at times like John Hurt, I lost her name, Mary Shelley romance story or something that they got going on. There's a whole element where I mentioned the lady got burnt or got hung because they thought she was a witch. Like there's an interesting, like, I'd be curious as to how it comes across in the book, because there is a lot of interesting elements. It feels like there's 3 different little plot lines that go on through it. Anyway, yes, I'm wrapping up my review. It's so cheesy. There's some serious leaps in logic on behalf of the plot as well as the characters. Totally entertaining. I highly recommend it. You should watch it if you're into that kind of thing. And it's really, other than some of the gore, which is good, fun, but not like really convincing. I don't think there was any nudity. It's pretty harmless. You can find it on YouTube. Just search it. You can find the whole thing for free.
Well, all right.
Who wants to go next?
Can I ride the Doctor Who coattails?
Please do. Yes.
All right. So your Frankenstein is this overpowered, crazy-looking monster from time travel. Mine too.
What?
Is this the brain of Morbius?
Oh no! It is the haunting of Villa Diodati, commonly the latest in the series of episodes from Doctor Who season 14 with Jodie Whittaker, and she, to retcon Big Finish, she meets Mary Shelley and Lord Byron and Mary Shelley's fiance, or I think
I couldn't remember his name either. And like,
is it Percy?
Percy,
yes. He's super famous. He's equally as famous, but I couldn't remember him either.
And and they are at the Villa of Diodati. I'm always going to screw up this person because it's not easy to say.
Diodati, we like to potty.
Hey, there you go. And so it's a stormy night and inspiration all around for Frankenstein. And who should show up but the last lone Cyberman? Dun dun dun. And you can see, as Randall is very much helping, you can see his face underneath the Cyberman helmet. He just wants to go around and he's trashing the place up. He's zapping everything. You know, he is basically the Frankenstein monster as a Cyberman meeting Mary Shelley. Subplot, the place is haunted. Like Graham sees ghosts, but he doesn't know that they're ghosts. And they kind of leave it a little hanging at the end of the episode. The doctor basically shows up there because she wants everyone to meet Mary Shelley. But, you know, right off the bat, she's telling him, okay, don't mention anything about Frankenstein. Don't mention anything about Frankenstein. And she's dropping the bomb left and right. You know, you talk about dropping paradoxes. She's like mentioning things here and there. And it's like, bad time travel. Don't. But hey, if your previous incarnation was John Hurt doing it in another movie, why not?
Right. I mean, I kind of feel like this is the same universe now.
Exactly. Like any minute now, after this whole thing happens, maybe John Hurt will show up in his car and whisk Mary Shelley away.
Right after they leave at the end of this episode, like blink their memories, then John Hurt shows up.
Yeah.
It's his mid-regeneration crisis. He just gets a new car, goes back in time all willy-nilly. He's like,
Right.
War stinks. I'm going to go on a holiday. Got this chameleon circuit working. It's good.
My TARDIS has wheels.
So we had talked about this episode because on this, God, why did we choose this season to do a live stream for every episode of Doctor Who? Like, but we had talked about this. We did every episode that season, and I want to say we kind of enjoyed that episode. How do you?
Yeah, it was
feel?
a great setup.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was a setup.
I thought it was a great episode. You know, you had all the elements of your basic Doctor Who. You had running in corridors. You had the completely going up and down the same freaking staircase over and over. You know, it's the same staircase. They're running back and forth. It's just like running through corridors on the TARDIS. You know, you had meeting a historical figure. So you had the classic Doctor Who talking about his history. And then you had some of the supernatural elements, like with the ghosts that show up, as well as with the fact that a Cyberman shows up. You have a classic villain, which then leads into the next two-parter. I'm pretty sure. I think so. Yeah.
And I know it's already been done, but like literally in Doctor Who, it's already been done. But yeah, the Cyberman is a great analog for Frankenstein's monster.
Totally. So that's my Frankenstein pitch. My review, best episode, probably one of the best episodes for this season. You know, I don't want to go into the whole season of Doctor Who, but I really liked this season. I really liked that episode, and I thought, hey, Frankenstein, man.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep a little before we move on to the next pick. Let's keep a little running tally. Where's a picture of him? Better Frankenstein or better Frankenstein? which we going with here?
I vote Cyberman.
Okay, I actually think the Cyberman is a better Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, just check out that.
He's Franken
Meat.
meatloaf. I'm telling you.
He doesn't even have
Like the food?
neck bolts. Where's Unbound's neck bolts?
The neck bolts, that's something interesting, and this is not. I didn't know this for a long time. People generally, unless they're universal, shy away from the neck bolts. That's why you'll see a lot of the bolts in the temples, which they kind of do here. This is a different version of the neck bolt because it's a plate that he clamps onto. Because Universal doesn't own Frankenstein, but that specific design with the neck bolts, they own that. So people don't generally do the neck bolts, even though that's what we all picture when we think Frankenstein.
I picture
right.
I picture Fred Gwynn, but that's just me.
All right. So far, Frankenstein Unbound, get out of here. Cyberman, better Frankenstein. Who wants to go next?
I'm ready whenever.
Go ahead. Oh, we'll go in a circle.
Okay. So I went with so far the only movie that's actually named Frankenstein, just purely Frankenstein. But I went with the 2015 retelling of Frankenstein, which is based on Mary Shelley's original, but also rewritten by the director, who is Bernard Rose. It stars Xavier Samuel as Adam, or the monster, but he doesn't know his name until the end. Spoilers, his name is Adam. And then it's got Carrie Ann Moss and Danny Huston. This is a Superman 2 reference right there. I don't know. It's Huston, Danny Huston. I don't know. It's so that's like the main tweak here is that
It's got Tony Todd.
Yeah,
Wow.
basically the Dr. Frankenstein role has been split in half, and so you've got both Carrie Ann Moss and Danny Huston as basically the main role of the scientist, but it's more like an underground team of scientists. And so this is a modern retelling. So this is taking place in 2015-ish, right around that time. And so Carrie Ann Moss's character and Danny Huston's character create this Frankenstein, and when he comes out, he looks just like, he's picturesque. He is Adam, and I believe they don't delve into the science of it too much, but they basically say they printed him. He's like his eye was micro printed or something. So I don't know the whole science of it. They didn't rob graves and get body parts and stitch this guy together. They created a body for him. Yeah, you can see some of that. It goes south pretty fast, but that one to the left is also him.
So is he first off, I'm intrigued by the basically modernizing the technology itself, which makes sense. So is he degrading? Is that
yes? He starts degrading rapidly. He starts out here, and yet he's still like a newborn. And for our audio listeners, I don't even know how to describe him. He's like a I don't know. It looks like James Vanderbeek. He looks like I don't know.
Who
does he look like?
He looks
Chris
like
Evans, maybe?
Yeah. Chris Evans before he becomes Captain America.
Yeah, he's a smaller, younger guy. He's still a man, but a smaller, younger guy than you would picture normally as a Frankenstein type character. That's pretty close to a sexy Frankenstein.
He's a pretty sexy Frankenstein at the beginning, but he quickly starts deteriorating. And so you were mentioning the neck bolts. The interesting thing about this is the first thing that happens is he gets this lesion right on his neck, which is where you would normally see the neck bolts.
Right.
And that's the first sign of his deterioration. And so they're we're going to have to biopsy that. It's interesting because he comes out as a kind of young adult, newborn. So all of his reactions are just like a newborn would be. His eyes haven't developed yet. And he's got his rooting instinct, he's looking for food, that kind of thing. It's really the premise is super interesting. Then he starts deteriorating, and he's got the strength of 10 men, that whole deal. And at one point, he's broken down enough where they're abort the mission, we're getting rid of him. He's a failed experiment, so they're going to euthanize him and start over. But he's unkillable, basically, pretty close to unkillable. So they try to take him out, and he escapes. And so it's when does he learn to walk? He basically learns how to walk when he's escaping the facility that they've got him in. So there's some leaps in logic a little bit. It's okay, this guy doesn't know how to talk. He can barely keep his eyes open. The light hurts his eyes because he's so new. And yet he's able to operate an elevator and learn how to walk pretty fast. But by the time he escapes, like he can sprint like crazy. Like that's his main thing is he's like a super soldier. He's just like super gross looking. But like you follow him from that moment on into the world and you see how, I mean, like it's also an interesting story about how we treat people, you know, like he's clearly, not meant, you know, like he's not mentally developed yet. He's literally a walking infant, you know, and he's learning things as he goes. And yet he's got the strength of 10 men and he's you know, like he's decaying and stuff. And so he gets into all sorts of altercations with the police. It's super gory at times. Like, I don't want to give too much away, but part of his escape involves them. They're like ready to use a bone saw on his head and cut him open. You know, one of the defining features of him is his eyes. And so they were going to cut his cranium with a bone saw so that they could extract the eyes. So he's an infant. He doesn't know what he's doing. He uses this bone saw and they were going to do that. They did this to me. So I do this to them. That kind of monkey see, monkey do kind of thing, only horrible. So he bone saws a dude in the face or like in the head, you know, and just like his incredible strength, he knocks people into walls. I mean, like just gross. He bone saws that dude and then touches his brain. Like there's some pretty crazy gore that happens in here. And I was like, whoa, I had to look away. And I'm pretty, you know, like I've seen my fair share of horror movies, but like when you're touching a dude's brain, holy moly. Yeah, just things go horribly, horribly wrong for this Frankenstein character. And it's captivating. That's the main thing.
It sounds like definitely so far the most thoughtful take on the story. That variation on the story.
It's super great. You showed a screenshot of the dog at one point.
Right.
This dog, he runs into this dog, and it's basically his first kind of interaction with another living being outside of the doctors that created him. And so this dog like helps him find food and actually teaches him how to bury his dead kind of thing. And then this scene that you have on the screen where he's carrying the dog's body. Obviously things go south. And so that creates a moment where he of course is going to react violently. They really tie into Mary Shelley's stuff in a very clever way, in that like in Mary Shelley's original story, he comes across a little girl and that goes poorly. And then, you know, then the townsfolk like chase him back to Castle Frankenstein and yada, yada, yada. And so they weave in elements from the original story in a very clever way, but also do a really good job of tying in modern technology and also like modern social politics and whatnot. So you have like the way that, some of the tensions that we're seeing in policing, you know, like that kind of thing, how we treat our homeless citizens, you know, that kind of thing. And then like one of the cooler parts of it is that like there's smartphones and Frankenstein interacts with a smartphone. I was like, holy cow, this is pretty great. Jenna asked in the chat if it's streaming anywhere. I watched it on Vudu. Right now it's free on Vudu with ads, or you can rent it if you don't want to watch the ads. I really enjoyed it, so I'll just jump to that. What was good about it was pretty much all the stuff that I've kind of said. It's like socially relevant and yet a really good adaptation of the original story, and yet it takes liberties in kind of cool ways. I originally watched it because I saw that it was like 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Then I went onto IMDb and it's got a much lower score, but I can see why it got a pretty good score on Rotten Tomatoes because it was fun. I would recommend it.
Cool.
You know, I like how you mentioned that he's 3D printed, or he's
right.
printed, because it's definitely steeping it in modern science. It was
right.
really cool premise. I mean, I don't want to step on our official scientist, wow, amazing thing here, but you know, they're actually started taking tissue and printing hearts to use for heart transplants. So yeah, that's some pretty far out shit, man.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me, I mean, without like if they tone down the strength, it makes me think of Moon. If you've ever seen the movie Moon, and they're all clones of an astronaut. I'm sorry, I'm giving it away, but
You're a spoiler city tonight. That's okay.
oh yeah, I am. But
everything she talks about, here's a late warning. It's going to be full of spoilers.
Yeah, you find out early on in the movie anyway. But they deteriorate. You know, it's like they clone out a copy and then it deteriorates until it's like no good, and then they get a fresh one, and they just keep doing that. And that's what it makes me think of, something like that, where they would be able to create a life, but it wouldn't be able to, sustain itself or whatever. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But did they learn anything from Multiplicity and they didn't copy a clone?
You never make a copy of a copy.
Yeah,
right.
that's a good question. I don't know. Moon is a great movie, by the way.
It is a great movie. And yeah, that I highly recommend.
Okay. So, I did want to hit a couple comments. Paul had said that he looks like a love child of Chris Evans and Matt Damon, and that seems about right. Oh, hold on. There's somebody else in there. There's somebody else in there. I can't quite place it. But
he's got a little bit of that Skarsgård look to him too.
Oh, there's the like neck.
Yeah, there's your
that's where the bolt
your neck bolt as it's starting.
Okay, so Frankenstein, how they stack up. Hold on, I lost the Cyberman. Where'd he go? Cyberman or this guy? Honestly, this guy, I don't know. He's closer to. He's still not even like your traditional Frankenstein. If they kind of printed him,
right?
Who we going with?
He gets pretty goopy too at one point. Like, oh my god. Yeah. There's a scene where you get to see more of his body as he's changing clothes and whatnot, and it's like, oh, dude is jacked up.
I'm going to point out Jenna's comment about how he was in Twilight, so I'm going to throw this out there that he's probably the sparkly Frankenstein.
Is that
because he's kind of got a little bit of that sheen on him.
He's got the shine.
He is sweaty.
I'm glad you mentioned that comment because Jenna said that she's met him and he was in Twilight Eclipse, whatever. I don't know.
I think that's the third one.
And then she said, "Don't judge me."
That's fair. That's fair.
Jasper says he kind of looks like Ferris Bueller in one of those photos.
Victor Frankenstein? Victor? Anyone?
What are you doing here? Go home.
Yeah.
All right.
He does start to learn how to speak throughout the course of the movie, but pretty broken language.
Or a gory Ryan Seacrest, Genesis.
Oh, there we go. All right.
I kind of see that too.
This season on American Idol.
So far, he's both the sexiest and grossest looking Frankenstein monster.
Yeah, it's really got a lot of variety to it.
Melanie, what do you watch?
I watched the Frankenstein Chronicles on Netflix, just the first season though. But that was from 2015. Let's see, the overview says Inspector John Marlott, whatever, I don't know, investigates a series of crimes in 19th century London which may have been committed by a scientist intent on reanimating the dead. And the main character is played by Sean Bean. So it begins, I'm going to just, the spoilers, I'm going to spoil the whole thing because the best parts of it come at the end, basically, of the season. And I want to, anyway. So it starts off because they find the body of a child that washed up in a like boggy area. But it's actually several children that were stitched together into one body. And
Franken children.
They hire this, or they don't hire. They have this cop that they put in charge of figuring that crime out, because at this point in time they're having a big debate in the science area about physicians want to have laws passed to basically give them special rights that other people wouldn't have. So it would be bad for like apothecaries and like midwives and things like that. But it would also make it so that the dead people that they used for dissections and stuff would only be criminals and things like that, because part of the issue they were claiming was that people were digging up graves and things like that, and that's bad, So the guy goes out and investigates, and he finds some grave robbers. He finds some bad people that are buying and selling, or stealing and selling children. He finds some people that are murdering people to sell their bodies, throughout this whole thing. And there's this there's a thing where there's a girl, like a teenager, that he kind of rescues, but she's like he keeps her as his witness, and she's staying with him for a while. And there's a bit where, I don't need to tell you the whole, anyway, he figures out who it is towards the end. And he's the main character is syphilitic, going slightly crazy. He's been taking mercury pills. And he's very distraught anyway, because his wife and his daughter have passed away. And, he's a religious guy, and he's going through a lot of issues. And along the way, these different people he investigates, he meets Mary Shelley, who is a person in this world. And she's not really, she's influential, but only in a small way. And dude really actually figures out, he solves a lot of crimes along his way, trying to figure out this one crime, basically. But he finds out who was doing it, and they basically frame him because they know he's got syphilis and that he's going a little crazy. They frame him by killing the girl that's staying with him and saying that he did it. Like, they literally find him covered in her blood, holding the knife, standing over her. So he's hanged. Spoilers, yes. They killed the main character,
Sean Bean.
And
that's hardly a spoiler. He's famous for being killed in every role he's in, but it is still a spoiler.
It's usually in the first season. So,
yep.
But in the last episode, you find out, he dies, and then he wakes up, and he is Frankenstein's monster. And he's highly religious.
What?
Highly religious, and his wife and daughter are dead. So this is not what he wants. This is like damnation for him.
Is that him?
No.
There?
Well, not that I saw him.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he ends up that way, but that's not what he starts out like. He basically starts out like him with like sewing, but when he wakes up, the guy, he had a little patch of nasty syphilis stuff on his hand. When he wakes up, the guy lifts his hand up to him, and he's like, "Look, you're cured," and he's like, So,
dude, he would have a great look for Frankenstein.
Well, that's right. There's a second season after that, so that's why I'm interested to find out what happens. But the thing that I was like, that I really liked about it, because it was pretty good. It was okay, and it tackled a lot of really serious subjects, I thought, that nobody really wants to ever talk about, like poor people and the crap they had to do back then, especially in the children. And anyway, but my point is, like, I like knowing who he is, the Frankenstein, knowing his perspective on, being there. Like, this is the person that I just spent the last good portion of my life trying to foil. I did not succeed, and then he made me what I was trying to stop him from, doing.
Right.
And it goes against he's like, now I'm damned. I can't go to heaven. Just like the horror really of it all I feel like is very well expressed in this version.
Yeah, I really like the idea of I feel like it seems pretty unique, the idea of, because you had talked to me before you got that far into the season. You're like, well, this is what I'm watching, but I don't even know who Frankenstein is. Like I haven't, like, I don't know anything about what's going on yet. I was like, well, you don't have to watch the whole season if you don't have time.
I had to, because I needed to know at least, you know, at least some of it. And it took lots of twists and turns and stuff. But yeah, I thought that was really, really good. And I am excited to see what's going to happen in the next season now, because now he's freaking Frankenstein, but or Frankenstein's monster, you know what I mean?
I can't think of another take on Frankenstein. Maybe it does exist, but I can't think of another one off the top of my head where you start the story following the guy who becomes, like, he's your main character and then becomes Frankenstein's monster later on. Like, I can't think of another take on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or at least does it to that extent.
Yeah. Well, I like it a lot. But one of the other aspects that I like of it, like I said, Mary Shelley was in here a little bit, and she helps him understand things, I think. But her story is supposed to be based on a time she had where she was hanging out with, like, her husband and Lord Byron and a couple other people, and they believed that you could reanimate the body with electricity, like, for example, like when you do use a defibrillator. And in the story in the show, one of them took some poison or something like that, and they tried to revive him, and it didn't work. And that was kind of what she based her story on. But the guy that actually ends up being, like, the Frankenstein here, he's not Frankenstein. I forget what his name is. He doesn't even use. He's like, you were expecting electricity, but he's like, electricity isn't the secret to, you know, reanimating the dead. And it's messed up. It's so messed up. But the girl that was living with him had him like an abortion that he had administered to her, and he's explaining to him after he's already Frankenstein that he uses those tissues.
He's basically doing stem cell research back then.
Yeah.
In the 1700s.
Like whole lot of SJW virtue signaling.
Bring him back, GCU SJW corner.
So between these last two takes on Frankenstein, what are you guys saying? Like, sci-fi uses its format for social messages, social commentary?
Maybe,
but not in my Star Wars, by gum, and not in my Doctor Who's, and not in my Star Treks or any other thing,
or my Marvel,
my Marvel. No,
my Marvel or my DC.
How dare you? How dare you try to talk down to me with actual lessons?
Get woke, go broke.
I don't care if the Green Death was talking about social injustice.
That's right. Yeah. Well, who cares if it's all about, you know, the environment?
So, Sean Bean, we got two sexy Frankensteins.
That's fair.
Well, I wouldn't know that I'd call Sean Bean sexy any longer.
He's
old. Okay,
he's smoldering.
I didn't say it.
I mean, he's syphilitic and a little crazy in this, so he gets real.
That does bring the sexy quotient down a notch.
A little.
It's really sweaty and grimy. You know?
Hey, before we get too far from Frankenstein's Chronicles, I just did a quick check. Was 2015 an important date for Frankenstein?
I guess so. Huh. Weird.
Because you had the Frankenstein Chronicles came out in 2015. Jesse's movie Frankenstein came out in 2015. The kid that played Frodo, I can't think of his name right now, Elijah Wood. Mm-hmm. His movie came out, Victor Frankenstein. And then there was a really bad movie called Frankenstein versus the Mummy, and they all came out in 2015.
Frankenstein versus the Mummy was 2015?
Yes.
Oh, that looked.
I think it was a remake, though. I think it was a remake of the one you were talking about.
Oh, okay. I almost watched one, a version. I don't know. I thought it was older, but it was like 2 hours long. I'm like, I'm not doing that. But okay.
That's the other thing about my movie that was nice is it was 90 minutes long. So it was like, it's long enough to get the story told, but not too long to bore you.
I feel like some of the classic movie monsters, that's how they do. We'll get waves of them where maybe some studio or somebody will take a chance on like, we're going to do a Frankenstein. It's been a while and it does well. So then other people are like, Frankenstein's back in. Pile in. It's public domain. We could do this. Okay, so Jenna says, wasn't Universal going to do a dark universe starting with Tom Cruise as the Mummy and Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll? They were going to do a Frankenstein in that series. What happened to that franchise? The Mummy happened?
Yeah.
No, I mean, like that thing's restarted several times because I watched the Dracula movie that was supposed to start that, and then they were like, nah, no. Just kidding, not this one. And then they had another movie, and I don't remember what that was, but they were like, no, maybe not this one. And they were like, but the Mummy, that one, no, maybe not.
They were getting official with the Mummy. I remember a bunch of money because they had signed on Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man. I don't know who was involved with the Frankenstein thing, but yeah, Russell Crowe was Dr. Jekyll. They had all these people signed for movie deals, and then the Mummy came out and it bombed because it didn't look good. And also, like, it's one of those, I have not seen it, but from what I understand, it's one of those movies where like it's obviously setting up a huge franchise. Don't do that with the first movie. Like, you got
the Dracula one was kind of like that. It was kind of like, this is a big deal, and it was okay. It was fine. And it just wasn't quite what they were looking for.
So they keep trying. The movie bombs, and they're like, oh no. Now we're just gonna do the Invisible Man, a little smaller budget horror thing. So that's kind of what they're doing now. They've basically farmed the properties out to Blumhouse or whoever. Just like, here, okay, fine, make something.
I feel like they had the Warner Brothers, the DC problem, where it was like, we're going to make an extended universe. And it sounds like a good idea. And then they start trying to do it. And it's not as easy as it sounds. Marvel made it look good.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Darn it. I had the whole thing in my head and now I lost it. Oh, well.
Sorry, my fault. I derailed you with the 2015.
No. That wasn't it.
I'm trying to find information for Jenna here.
Oh, the Invisible Man. Yeah. They did make the Invisible Man, and that's what they're using. And yeah, there you go, Wolfman. They have somebody set up to play Wolfman, and it's like
right
news about it. I think
also Elizabeth Banks is still attached to the Invisible Woman. She's going to direct and star, apparently, and it's not related to Invisible Man.
Okay.
But I know they pretty much threw a bunch of their plans out when the Mummy failed. I feel like they're going to basically handle it, very much like DC, to where they're like, big cinematic universe, and then like those movies didn't financially fail, but more critically failed, to where they're like, we're gonna do a Joker and this over here and this over there, and they just start doing like kind of random one-off, like more interesting takes on the properties instead of just focusing on building the cinematic universe. And I feel like that's what they're doing now. Dark Army, which was, I think, originally planned to be a part of this whole thing. It was basically like the Avengers of the Dark Universe, directed by Paul Feig, is supposedly still in the works, which is weird.
I looked up the thing that Jenna was asking, and it's Javier Bardem is
right.
Penelope Cruz's husband, and he was in talks to star as Frankenstein in Universal's classic monster movie series. So he was in talks. I don't know how far that got, or I assume it maybe got shut down because the Mummy.
Apparently there's a Renfield movie in the works. Renfield. Let's do a movie on him. Okay.
Just as long as it stars Tom Waits. It's got to have Tom Waits as Renfield.
So I can't find a good picture, if there is one, of Sean Bean as a Frankenstein monster. So where's he sit in the I guess we're kind of between him and the Cyberman. I think Melanie, did you say or somebody said he had a good look? Maybe it was Jesse, had a good look for Frankenstein. Yeah, I think a wider kind of blocky head is a good look. It gives you a lot to work with in terms of like matte surface area to do your like makeup on. Like just because this is interesting, but like I just don't picture. And for this take, it sounds right, but I don't picture like a sleek, thin guy as the traditional Frankenstein.
He looks more zombie than he does Frankenstein. And not that there's a lot of difference because they're both undead, but there is difference because, like Dr. Frankenstein was trying to create almost the perfect man out of scrap pieces.
Well, and it makes sense if you're basically like printing a human and like you'd want something light and sleek. You got a little skinny guy. Versus
how much material do we have? Oh shoot, we're short by about 100 pounds.
We're down a spool for this 3D printer, this maybe human printer.
Take some off his head. He doesn't
take some off the top. Whereas the classic movie monster or the classic Frankenstein, it's like you need a guy who's big enough that you can picture like somebody had to go in there and sew all the ligaments and veins together. And like, so it helps if everything's larger, plus just a big bulky monster is kind of the classic monster thing. But
they have lots of the sewn on, that's like a feature. They show a lot of it because he doesn't have the bolts either because they don't use electricity or whatever.
Right.
But
I like that angle too, that they're like using science that we know works, but for something else.
Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, that's fun because that's a modern take, even though it's still a period piece. Stem cells. It's very interesting.
Well, and there's also, I guess it doesn't really matter, but there's a woman that's the sister of the doctor that did this to him. And they had kind of fallen in love a little bit, which is cheesy and I don't really care for, but I think it was a necessary part of it because when he first is like made and they do have him staggering around, he can't walk right yet and he has issues and they're trying to feed him and he won't eat because he does, and then they show him to her and she's horrified by it, but she comes to him and she's like, I was a part of this, and so I'm never going to get into heaven either. So we should just make this heaven for you and I. This second chance that you have at life, and convinces him to eat, and they're gonna, I don't know, whatever.
Bride of Frankenstein.
I know, but I was thinking, and that's a really interesting aspect of it too. That even though he brought him back to life, and she kind of brings that up too, like. You might not eat and you might die, but that doesn't mean he's going to let you go, which is really messed up to think of too.
Right. Like you just keep bringing you back, man.
Exactly. But that, even after I brought him back, he could do that. He could just refuse to eat until he dies again. And then maybe again and again and again, depending. That he still, even though he's a monster, he's his monster, he still kind of has the free will to do at least that. You know what I mean? But they had to have something to keep him there instead to make up a second season, I guess.
I feel like that's another interesting aspect that all these stories handled a little bit different is the idea of who they were before versus after, because in Jesse's as well as mine, both of our Frankenstein monsters in our stories felt like they just didn't really exist before. Because mine was like, the actor's like talking normal, pronouncing things normal, and then Victor Frankenstein says something about murder and he's like blah 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 murder, like he's just now learning that word. But the idea is like, and he's like, well, who made you? Did Victor make you too? Like, he doesn't know anything. Versus in the case of Doctor Who, Matthew's pick, there's a whole thing with like, he talks about who he was before, and we kind of get that red herring where we think that those weird flashbacks were him when it turns out it wasn't. It was the time child. And then Melanie's, where we get a bunch about who he was before, and it definitely that carries well over into him being the monster. That's an interesting just difference on the take, on the different takes of it. Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, I agree.
That's why you always need a normal brain, not an Abby normal brain.
Right. Young Frankenstein, man, that movie's so good. That would have been, it's what? I can't. Yeah.
Oops, sorry. My dog was making noises earlier. You joked about doing that one before we started.
I know. I thought about it, but then I was like, no, I want to find something really unique. And this episode, I'm super excited about because I feel like we all, and Matt's pick, I think, is as valid because they play Cyberman specifically. They play up the Frankenstein thing. Chose vastly different takes on the character. Putting on the Ritz. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I wanted to do Young Frankenstein because it's just kind of like that low hanging fruit. But
we had also joked about doing Frankenstein Monster Frankenstein. But man, we did like a whole live episode on that. So
so go find that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that in 2018? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it was still 2019.
The 2015 of 2019.
Wow, that I didn't expect that to go so long, but
you know, like when we heard about this, I was like, oh man, these are all going to be the same, but this turned out to be pretty fun and pretty good variety.
I actually thought we were going to find more variety in the vampire one than the Frankenstein one, but maybe it's because the Frankenstein story is so contained. Like it's much more specific than even vampires. You got the Dracula story, but then vampires is its own like breed of monster versus Frankenstein. And I feel like since the source material is so specific, it maybe pushes people to like create, to go a little more wild with it. I don't know.
What monster are we doing? Did you guys talk about that?
No. What monster should we do next week? Circling the drain. Go to the Grawlixpodcast.com
where you can circle the drain live
with us. We're all circling. We all float down here.
Oh,
at 8
I think I just said it.
Thursday nights.
I think I just said it. Clowns.
Okay.
Just clowns.
Okay.
And if you're having trouble finding something interesting or unique, that's not it, you know, circus, something like that. Clown themed horror.
Ooh, clown.
Yeah.
How's that?
And can they be
That's terrifying. Let's do it.
They can definitely be from outer space.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody in the future for listening. Have a good weekend.
And come back later for your clowns. You're clowning around.
Next week, clowns. Watch something clown related and come chat us up about it.
Yep.
All right. Bye, everybody.